Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Movies and TVs on the Ball. My name is Steve, your host, and with me as always is
Jay.
and today we are getting it back to 21 Jump Street. A couple months ago, or a year ago or so, we reviewed the
Movie.
movie with
Right.
Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill, and I'm flipping through Amazon Prime, and I find out that the 21 Jump Street television series is on Prime. So I decided to, rope Jay into doing a 21 Jump Street, talking about the pilot,
Right.
which we found out is a two-parter. So this is going to be part one. 21 Jump Street starred
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, who you know from Pirates of the Caribbean, Edward Scissorhands, Finding Nemo, Ed Wood as Officer Tom Holland, Richard Jinko, who doesn't really appear in the pilot, but he was in, if you remember, he was actually in a spin-off of this show called Booker when this show went off the air.
Okay.
And he was also in I don't think he's in the pilot. I think he comes back to the pilot. He was in his other roles include he was in Night of the Roxburies.
Okay.
He played the guy
SNL
that's like,
movies.
yeah, he was the guy that was like, hey, can we get into the Roxbury with Richard Jinko? And he was in other films include he did a couple episodes of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, to name a few. But and then he showed up in 22 Jump Street in a cameo.
Cameo. Okay.
And then you had, of course, Mark Wasserman. Mark Wasserman. He was in Saved by the Bell, 90210, Magnum PI, a lot of 80s shows. He was student in Beverly Hills, 90210 and Wonder Years. He was in Little Corey, and he recently was in Showgirls 2, to name a few. So that was him. Let's see who else. Then you had Frederick Forrester. Frederick Forrester is okay. So who plays kind of? He's the he was in Falling Down. He was in Apocalypse Now. His last film was All the King's Men, but he died actually in June of 2023.
Okay.
Then you had Holly Robbins, who was in. She was in this show. Her other roles include Howard the Duck.
Okay.
She played Casey, which I think was Leah Thompson's friend or something. She was in Law and Order SVU, so she jumped through that hoop. She was in Touched by an Angel, Pacific Blue, Booker. She showed back up for Booker, the TV series, and she first started off in an episode of Sesame Street, but she shows up in the movie. She has a cameo where she plays the girl she plays one of the police car procedures. She says she's like, we need a car, and so they get that silver car in the movie. And she's like, just don't do some stupid shit like doing donuts and stuff. And they do that's the first scene they do where they're like, all right, they run each other over with the car kind of scene. I just remember that from the show. Then you had Dustin Negan, or Nigan. Dustin Nigan is best known for his role in. I wrote this down. Let's see. He played Officer Harry Thomas. He was in Warrior, Little Fish, NCIS. He's recently been in NCIS Hawaii. He showed up at a. Oh, he did a cameo in 22 Jump Street as a Vietnamese, one of the Vietnamese gang members, I think.
Okay.
So I mean, and he was in VIP with Pamela Anderson, and he was in Three Ninjas Kick Up.
Whoa, okay.
So like, I like kind of like looking at these and going like,
Right.
oh, I remember him from that movie. This is like the Troy McClure moment. And then you had Steve Williams, who plays the captain. He was in. He's best known for films such as Creighton Duke and Jason Goes to Hell. And he was in The Blue Brothers. He played Troop Mountain. He was in a television series that was canceled too soon.
Of what?
It was called The 100 Lives of Blackjack Savage. And it's about a Donald Trump rich businessman who inherits a castle that's haunted by a ghost of a black pirate who was lynched for freeing slaves. And it's complicated. It's complicated. It was on Disney.
Huh.
But it's one of the guys that do Cancel Too Soon's favorite like show they've ever like reviewed. So that's how I was known him from, and then you had Brandon Douglas. Let's see. Who is in this episode? He plays Kenny. He was in Dr. Quinn's Medicine Woman, Jag, and Touched by an Angel, to name a few. So that's the cast. So Jay, let's kind of do the plot first, and kind of then kind of see what we kind of thought about it. So the plot, pretty much, we see sort of like this. It's sort of, the pilot opens up with, I think. The pilot opens up with these kids this family is about to sit down for breakfast, or I think dinner. I think dinner, and
because they were having meatloaf.
They're having meatloaf, and it's sort of, it was kind of in that moment where I was watching it. It was like sort of what the late '80s, because this came out in this came out from 87 to 91, so it has that kind of late 80s, early 90s feel to it. So so we see like we see this kind of family about to eat dinner and sit down.
Yeah, they've got like a daughter and a son, and they're both like, we hate our parents.
Yes, well, and
they're not cool.
Well, we have. Oh, and it was also directed by Kim Manners, who directed episodes of X-Files. She actually directed episodes of 100 Lives of Blackjack Savage, Baywatch, and the Cancel Too Soon series Sidekicks, to name a few. They're about to have dinner. Okay, and then the daughter turns... And I love the fact that the daughter turns on some music, and she starts saying, like... the dad's very stern and very, like... in his own way. She's like reading the paper and is like, must we listen to this music? And she's like, come on, she's only going to be a teenager for a little while. And it kind of, for an opening, it's kind of shocking because, didn't you kind of think, like, just the fact that they're sitting down for dinner, and they have, and he's like, he's just sort of like, they talk about how, this is, how the meatloaf is terrible, and why aren't you playing don't you like playing the clarinet?
Right.
And the son's like, the clarinet sucks. And he's like, he's like, playing a clarinet is, really something,
Yeah, because I think it was the father's old clarinet from when he was a boy.
Mm-hmm. And then they're about to sit down for dinner, and then all of a sudden, two men come in, and one of them, when I was watching it, the guy that like, there's two men, and they're kind of like, they look like Michael Jackson from Thriller.
Yeah,
or Beat
everyone's
It.
sort of wearing 80s
Kind of
like leather,
80s
colorful
leather color
jacket.
and
Yeah.
like kind of red, and I love the fact that I love the fact that they were sort of like, they got the sunglasses and they got like these shotguns, and they're like, they come in and they go, "Hey everybody," and I love how you kind of don't know what's going on at first.
Right.
And he's like, "Hey everybody, why don't you get the tickets to the, give us." He's like, I heard, you kind of, and what I like about it is it starts out, you think this is like, okay, why is this so random?
Right. But it turns out their son owes them $6,000.
$6,000. And he's like, "Mom, please, just do what they say. Do what they say." And
They steal their Jaguar.
so they steal the Jaguar, and he says, and he's like, and I love that, and it's kind of, they're kind of aggressive. Well, they've got guns, but they're aggressive. He says,
It's a robbery.
well, no, I know. But he's like, "Give us the keys, or we'll take little homegirl to the prom." And it's kind of like, but anyway, you find out that he's like, that Kenny's in on it, and he's like, "Please just do what they say, and give them, just give them the money." And the dad's like, what do you mean the money? What is going on here? And so they steal the Jaguar, and they end up kind of driving off, and then the dad does the most reasonable thing and starts to call the cops, and Kenny kind of holds the receiver and says, "No, Dad, you can't call the cops or they'll come and kill me."
Right.
And then he's like, "What's going on?" And the mom is kind of like, "Kenny, what did you do? What did you do?" And and then we kind of break to where we're at a restaurant or at a diner.
Sort of like at a drive-in.
Drive-in.
Yeah.
And
They're getting coffee.
They're getting coffee, and then we're actually introduced to Tom Henson, who's played by Johnny Depp, and he's riding with Charlie Dodgson, who's played by Barry Martin. You know probably Barry Martin from Seinfeld. He plays Jerry Seinfeld's dad. He was in episodes of Punky Brewster and a movie called Hot Stuff, to name a few. But okay. I knew him from Seinfeld. That's where I was like, oh, that's the guy from Seinfeld. They talk about Hanson's dad, who was sort of a cop, and I think Barry's partner, or there's not really, or he kind of knew him in a way.
Yeah.
And then so they hear sort of like, "There's a 211 in progress. Please, any officer available, please head down to Maple Street," or
right.
something, or Maple Street. And he's like, "All right, kid, we're on it." And so they drive off, and they end up at the place of
where they just stole the car.
Where they stole the back to the residence of Kenny.
Right.
And they start kind of questioning and interviewing all the family members. We kind of see that the daughter is sort of into Johnny Depp's character, or
right.
The daughter is played by Noelle Herling, who was in Some Kind of Wonderful, and she didn't have a lustrous career. She was in Highway to Heaven as well, but this was her last, or she was in a movie in the 1990s called Grifter. Anyway, but she starts kind of flirting with Henson, and it's kind of surprising how Henson looks so young and youthful.
Right.
What do you think of Johnny Depp in this role? I mean, this is kind of his first breakout role. Is it kind of weird seeing him?
Sort of. Yeah. Was this before or after Nightmare on Elm Street?
Oh, this was, let's see, 21 Jump Street was released in 87. I think Nightmare on Elm Street was on.
I think this is after.
It is after. This is right. I think it was maybe not right after. But let's see. He was in. Yeah, no, it was 84.
Okay.
And this was.
And you said 87.
87. So this was like right after, or like maybe a couple years after.
Right.
21 or thing, and then we kind of see. So he's kind of making a statement, and Kenny's sitting up on, kind of watching the cops sort of doing their job, and the parents. What do you think of the parents? Because the parents are really like, Kenny, get down here. You know, you need to kind of tell us why two men stole my Jaguar.
I think it's because didn't Ken say he's mad because he didn't get to go to the Eurythmics concert?
Eurythmics concert,
he got
yeah.
like a B in gym class.
Yeah, he got a B in gym class.
Something dumb.
Yeah, and so he basically, and then Tom goes over and kind of talks to him and kind of says, what you did was, I know you're scared, kid. I know that, and he's like, I'm not going to tell you spit. So I guess they can't say this, network television. TV show, that's right. Spit. And he's like, so they kind of take their message and they end up coming out, and he says, they have Tom, and I think his name is Charlie.
Oh yeah, his partner. Charlie gives him the keys,
and they kind of walk out and sort of sit in their car and kind of talk about what's your thoughts on the kid.
Right.
Don't you think the kid seems a little bit too? Isn't there something kind of wrong with the kid? Not wrong, but something unsettling with the kid. And
right,
then
debating if he's going to talk or not, or
yeah.
the family's not going to press charges.
Yeah.
But then I think it cuts over to a robbery
in a convenience store. Right. And of course this robbery has these, and it's sort of that 80s. You kind of when I was watching it reminded me a little bit like that RoboCop robbery.
Okay.
In the convenience store. But like, so these two guys are or is it one guy?
I think it's 4 people.
4 people robbing the convenience store.
Right.
And I think it's the main villain, right?
I don't know. Well, I have no idea I've never seen this show. I don't know.
No, I think a guy named Breeze, played by Blue. Yeah, it was him, Blue Makema, who was in 2012. He was in The Final Cut with Robin Williams. He's been in Girl in Progress and episodes of Smallville. So
okay,
there we go. So anyway, he's got a shotgun and he's like going, "Where's the safe?" Or he's like, empty out the register. Where's the safe? And the safe is behind beer cans, or am I thinking?
No, there wasn't. I don't think there was a safe.
There was a safe. Okay, I'm using this as a. I'm thinking of the scene in RoboCop.
No,
it reminded me so much of RoboCop.
I think they just grab some money from cash register and some beer.
And some beer, and they flee out. And then he calls the police officers, and then as they're driving to as they're driving to, they hear about the 401
Right.
or the to whatever.
Well, I think who's his partner? Charlie tells Johnny Depp to follow that car even before it's called in.
Oh yeah.
He can smell crime.
He can smell crime. He's so good. Yeah. So he basically, so they follow him, and then there's this kind of high speed chase, and then let me look at my notes. There's a high speed chase, and because what happens is they're stopped at it was kind of weird that they're stopped at a green light.
Yeah.
And that kind of and then the thieves take off, and the chase begins. Charlie tells dispatch what's going on. They chase them through an alley and pursue them down a one-way street. And I love the fact that they run them into some dirt. And Charlie and Henson pull out their gun, and then they pull out their guns and say freeze, dirt, and I love Henson, or Johnny Depp, is a little bit more. It's his kind of first time with a suspect, so he's a little nervous, and he's trying to kind of figure out what he is.
Because Charlie has to leave to go call in for backup, and they sort of leave all the people uncuffed,
right,
standing there.
And he's like, and I love the fact where, and the thugs are a lot more of like, what's this rookie doing here? Don't you have a bedtime and that kind of mentality? And he says, he's like, freeze, dirt. He's like, I ain't kidding, and then he's like, don't you have and he picks out a cigarette, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And he says, don't you have a light for me? And don't you have a light for me? And he's like, come on, and you can tell that they don't respect Johnny Depp's Henson at all. Let's see, then what?
They sort of get into a scuffle with him and sort of punch Johnny Depp, and then I think a couple of them steal the squad car.
They steal the squad car. That's right. And then there's a kind of another chase going on.
I think it just sort of cuts to the next.
Oh, and then no, the car chase. They steal the cop car, and then the next day they're interviewed.
Johnny Depp also breaks Charlie's nose.
Charlie breaks
done that to his two other partners.
Two other
three
partners.
People's noses.
He's broken. Oh yeah. Breaks Charlie's nose. Next day, at police headquarters, Henson comes in and gets hackled for the events. So he gets hackled, and he kind of gets, and everyone's like, oh, it's sort of the play pretend on the rookie, thing, then Charlie tells him when life gives you lemons, and then Charlie basically tells Henson that don't worry about it. If he always says, when life makes you lemons, make a martini.
Right.
And then we get to his captain, who I think is sort of the Nick Overton character in the movie.
Yeah.
And
sort of the police chief.
Police chief, and his name is Captain Brody, who and he's played by Francis X. McCarthy. He was in The Man with Two Brains with Steve Martin. He recently was in Interstellar. He's in episodes of Smallville and Basketball with the creators of South Park. And he asked him how, and he kind of says, how you doing? Are you, making progress? Or, how are you settling in from the events of last night? And I
thought, and then he was pretty much like, you're either fired or you're gonna have to take this new assignment.
Yeah, he's like, we're, and it's kind of and it kind of reminds me, if you look at sort of the movie, you know how in the movie he says, in the movie they get their first bus, but he forgets to read their Miranda rights,
right?
And he's like, Brooke, we're not gonna fire you. Instead, we've got a new. In the movie, it's more of like a new section in the '80s, and from the '80s called Jump Street. 31, that kind of thing in 21
Right.
Jump Street. But I guess this is sort of him getting into 21 going back to 21 Jump Street, becoming part of 21 Jump Street.
Right.
So and then we talked about the fact that he was in and I like the fact that we get somewhat of a backstory with the police captain,
Yeah.
that he was in the Navy at 16 during the Korean War. And we found out that Tom is actually 21, so it makes more sense that he's going back to, even though he looks so baby faced.
Right.
Which is, I think is interesting that Channing Tatum always looked older, just comparing the two together.
Right.
Captain Brody says he needs men to put the fear of God into whatever. Like, he's kind of like saying, we need people to be, we need stronger police officers to give fear, put fear into criminals, be more like
Batman.
Be more like Batman. And to whatever scumball is messing up, and I like how he calls him a scumball. I've never heard of that saying since like the 80s or 90s. Is messing up, and then he's a little offended but brushes off. Brody thinks if he puts Tom out in the field, that perps might get goofy. And I like the fact that, and then Captain Brody asks Tom if he's angry. Tom says he's not angry. Okay, you continue.
Yeah, so it turns out sort of going to make Johnny Depp go to this other force until he's older enough to like not look like a teenager while being a police officer. Mm-hmm. And then sort of after this scene, I think then it shows Johnny Depp back at his apartment being sad with his dad, like because
we find out that
his dad
is
a police officer
who got killed. So that gives him sort of the motivation to become
an officer. We also learned that Johnny Depp is really good at playing the saxophone. During
because that's what you did when you were in the 80s. Is
right.
You played the saxophones.
And then it has him sort of driving up to the abandoned church.
Okay, so 21 Jump Street, and like and so they get to the church, and then what I was kind of surprised was that the guy that's running it in the pilot wasn't Stephen Williams, who I thought was the captain who kind of was the captain in the show, and maybe he shows up in part 2.
Okay. Yeah, I don't
know. So it was this kind of guy, and this guy's like, welcome to Jump Street, and he's kind of got like, and I think he kind of plays the sort of Ice Cube kind of role, and he's like, kids, you need to, teenage up. Why are you looking like, you don't need to be looking like a police officer.
Drinking coffee.
And here's
a Pepsi.
Here's a Pepsi and chips. And Tom's a little bit like, okay, this is kind of weird.
Right.
And he says, and then and I like the fact that it's 21 Jump Street Division, which we really don't get, which I think you kind of get in the movie, where they have like different kinds of, we had, because remember in 21 Jump Street, the movie, he says, there was a thing at East High School, and like they were dressed up as cheerleaders as one of them,
Right.
And then let's see, tell us something about Jump Street. Tom meets Hobbs, and we get to meet them. Hobbs, who is sort of the girl of Jump Street, or the main focus girl of the Jump Street. She shows up actually in the pilot episode, or in the movie, where she's like, when they're like, we need a car for college.
Right.
And she's like, just don't be doing this stupid donuts and like stupid shit and stuff like that with your car, with the car. and
she gives they go to a montage of a makeover scene.
Makeover scene,
Right.
and I like then they kind of dress Johnny Depp in different
Outfits, and he gets
Hobbs
a
an outfit, and he
haircut.
gets a haircut. So he teenages up
Uh-huh.
a little bit, and I like that. I like that outlet or that montage. I thought that montage was kind of cool. Me, and then we kind of get Henson's Johnny Depp's first sort of
mission,
and his mission is to go. What was it, an alleyway?
Yeah, he's gonna. So one of the other, I forget his other partner is sort of already worked undercover, and they set up Johnny Depp to be his cousin.
Cousin, right? And
Yeah.
his cousin is basically
Looking to buy some drugs.
drugs, right, and you can kind of see that he sort of plays a part in it. I like the fact that it's not Jinko. What's
I don't remember their names.
uh
But I tell Johnny Depp over and over, this, you're just here to do the buy. You're not supposed to arrest anybody.
and he basically kind of that's what he tells them, and then
He does
the opposite. He tries to arrest them and puts his hand, tries to arrest them
And blows the other
and
guy's,
blows the other
cover
guy's
that he's
cover.
been working on for 9 months.
9 months, of course, he's been working on it for 9 months. And then drug trade. He takes Kenny, and then we kind of float back to Kenny, and kind of really see him.
Right. They have a brief scene with him delivering newspapers. And then he does
at 6 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning or
and
something.
he breaks into a jewelry store.
And he breaks into a jewelry store and starts stealing some jewels, because I guess he's trying to do that for the guys that came into the.
So he really wants to go see the Eurythmics again.
Yeah, I
He
guess
needs to
so.
buy a ticket or something. But we don't know.
Okay, so anyway. Jinko gathers the team around, talks about, and then we kind of get sort of Jinko going around the team again, and talking about sort of, okay, you guys, welcome to basically what's going on with all the schools and the drugs and the
Right.
what's the skinny, and each of them says, well, on East High School is dealing with East High School is dealing with, I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
They're doing drugs on this, and then telling the crew about the car. Jingo gathers the team around and talks about the undercover cops, and he's more worried about them keeping their grades up than anything. Then it's Tan's first day of class. He parks in the guy, and I love the fact he comes in, he parks his car, and then who does he park his car next to? The guy, Tyrell. We find out Tyrell is the guy that basically robbed Kenny's house.
Right.
And he's going, "What are you doing parking in my spot?" And Johnny Depp is like, "Well, what do you?" Or Johnny Depp is like, "I'm new here. What is it to you?" And he's like, you can't park in this spot. And then he takes out his keys or a knife or something and keys his car.
Yeah.
And then
they get in a fight.
And it's sort of like a.
All the other kids are gathered around.
And fight. And then
the teacher breaks them up.
And then Tyrell. Tyrell's basically punished because he's sent to the principal's office.
Oh, they both are.
Oh, they both are? I
Yeah.
thought they. And that's sort of the end of the episode of part 1.
Yeah, I think Tyrell gets weeks attention. Then they tell Johnny Depp that he has to bring his dad in.
Yeah, and we were kind of like, oh, I need somebody to fake my dad.
Yeah.
And that's the pilot for part 1.
Uh-huh.
What do you think of the pilot part 1 first, or do you want to?
I thought it was, I don't know, it was
kind of hokey.
A little bit, yeah, but it's okay. I guess I've never seen the show. Like I never even.
I haven't seen this show, and I've kind of like I kind of wanted just to watch it just to see how it kind of plays with the movie a little bit. I mean I like the character. I think Johnny Depp. You can tell that this is sort of his wheelhouse, and this all is it's also his like this is his real moment to shine, or like his. You can tell this is his. This is sort of his. His star power that left him into star power.
Okay.
But yeah, I thought it was all right. I think the movie, watching this, and then maybe coming from, this is also too generational. Kind of like looking at it from someone who grew up in the 2000s. I could say that I liked it. I didn't dislike it, but I wasn't. I kind of see that I was kind of like, it's a lot darker than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a little bit more lighthearted. But that was part one. We'll do part two coming up next. Hey guys, welcome back to part two of 21 Jump Street. When we last left off, or
right
where we start off in this one is basically they're kind of going back. They're starting their first sort of.
They had sort of finished the first day of school, and then sort of the second part starts off where they're sort of debriefing what happened on their first day.
First day, which is basically
Johnny Depp's first day of high school.
Johnny Depp's first day of high school, and I kind of, and so Johnny Depp pretty much, or Henson basically kind of goes to his first class, or no, he comes in and he gets in a fight with Tyrell.
Yeah, so he tells who's his officer, the Ice Cube of this show.
The Ice Cube.
Yeah, he tells this Ice Cube, who's a hippie.
Hold on, is Jinko.
Jinko, that he got in a fight with a guy named Waxer.
Waxer, who was and he's kind of got he looks like Michael Jackson.
A little bit, yeah. Well, he puts on the red leather coat.
Red leather coat, yeah. And he was the guy who basically broke into Kenny's house at the beginning of part one. Right. And then Kenny, he gets in a fight with him, and then the principal comes in and sort of breaks up.
Yeah.
The
fight, that's sort of towards the end of the first episode.
So basically, that kind of culminates. I could see that this show probably had like part one and part two back to back when it premiered.
Right, and so Jinko has him and I forget his partner, one of the other 21 Jump Street officers, do a stakeout on Kenny.
It's Officer Harry Truman. Loki.
Okay, yeah, Loki.
So they're sitting out at Kenny's house, and then Kenny basically he leaves, and they follow him to a.
He starts delivering newspapers.
Stealing
cameras.
And then he delivers newspapers, and he's like, "Where's he going? Where's he going?" And then he goes into a like downtown and breaks glass where he steals jewelry, doesn't he?
That was the first episode.
The first episode.
That's when he steals cameras.
He steals cameras. Okay. Yeah, he steals cameras, and then as he's stealing the cameras, I
guess Loki and Johnny Depp take
pursuit, and they follow him.
And there's a pretty long.
It's a pretty long chase. Yeah, but what'd you think? Since it's a long chase, how would you? I thought it was pretty like epic if you kind of think about it. I mean, not epic, but it was just sort of. It was long, but it was sort of like exciting.
I guess
maybe not exciting, but for at least the show, it was decently. I mean, to keep your.
There's some I don't know if there are continuity things. If the moped crashes, then suddenly he's off driving again. And
It's just it's no injuries to talk about basically.
But Johnny Depp and Loki start being chased by a normal police
cop, thinking that they're in trouble.
Ran like red lights.
They run a red light and stuff, and then the police officer, who is Officer.
I think it was Charlie, his
old partner, they kind of say, freeze dirtbag, and he's like, right, Johnny Depp and Loki basically go, it's us, we're cops, and he's like, Johnny Depp, or I'm gonna, Tom, or Officer Hansen, Officer Hansen, what do you guys, how do you guys get into this mess? And does that work for you?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Officer Hansen, how'd you get in this mess? And he's like, we were, chasing a suspect.
Right.
Right. And
So then I think it cuts to English class.
Then it cuts to English class. And what I've noticed is in a lot of high school, it always sort of focuses on one subject. Usually in movies, but I think in this one, I guess English class is the first class. And we have the teacher, and the teacher is basically saying, saying basically like they're studying
sentence diagrams,
and he talks about
he catches one of the students passing a note to Johnny
Depp, and it's a girl that's passing it to Johnny Depp, and so of course, what does the teacher do? Sees it, confiscates it, and reads it in front of the class.
Right.
And what I kind of, what was your so he reads it in top of the class, and he kind of says, oh, and he's like, and it's like, hey, Johnny Depp, do you want to go out? And
yeah, basically.
And then Johnny Depp writes a note and says, yeah.
No, he doesn't, because the note gets confiscated. He doesn't write back.
He doesn't write back.
That's like after class.
After class, okay. So anyway, Johnny Depp basically, or Henson basically goes. So Henson basically, writes back, and they kind of have this, the principal who looks a little bit like Ted's father from Bill and Ted. I don't think it's the same guy, but he basically talks about, you need to straighten up in class.
Yeah, so he confiscates the note, and he tries to make it into like a teaching lesson, like to analyze the note, and then
he uses it as an English lesson.
Yeah,
and that's right. And he does and then Henson does a snarky comment about like how he wants to.
I think what do you call it, like a schmozo or something.
Schmozo or bozo or something like that.
And then the English teacher, instead of giving him detention, says, like, you can get detention or you can come join my play of Rip Van Winkle.
Of Rip Van Winkle, which it was kind of a nice callback. Well, not a callback for us. Call forward, let's say, to if you remember in 21 Jump Street, the movie, which I'm going to kind of, just because talk about that, is that in 21 Jump Street, the movie, Doug gets caught up into acting class.
Yeah. And
that kind of reminded me a little bit of like, kind of reminded me of the film. It's like, okay, now we're in acting class, and then so Henson goes to, and then he's like, does Henson go straight to the theater?
I think it cuts to that. Yeah.
Cuts to him at the theater department.
Yeah.
And Henson is basically kind of shows up, and there's a bunch of kids there reading kind of lines and stuff. And he runs into Kenny.
Yeah, he gets partnered with
Kenny.
He's worried he's going to get recognized.
And he starts getting worried that Kenny's going to blow his cover, but Kenny is too stupid to
come. Hey, did you date my sister?
Did you date my sister? And he's like, yeah, I did. And I kind of like that they didn't like blow their cover. It's kind of far-fetched if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like weird when I was watching it with you. it reminded me of like that thing where that kind of routine where like they're chasing some guy and he just sort of like combs his hair and wears a different jacket and goes,
Right.
"Hey, sir, have you seen this guy in a red shirt? He was," and like, "Oh, yes, man," or he's in like a mustache and goes, "Oh, yes, he went that away."
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, thank you, sir," and then they kind of walk off. That's what it kind of reminded me of. And then, so they chase.
I think after that, it sort of cuts to Johnny Depp tries to follow Kenny after class, and Kenny's like, scram.
Scram, yeah.
And then Kenny sort of gets accosted by Wexler
Wexler
in the parking lot.
In the parking lot. Wexler sort of is like that. Wexler's a Michael Jackson kind of looking guy. And Waxer, yeah. And Waxer sort of says, you owe me 10 grand, or you still owe me the 10 grand.
I can't remember how much it is now, but it was $6,000.
It's $6,000 and like interest or something. And Kenny's like, what? I'll get it to you. I'll give it to you.
And then Johnny Depp's like, leave him alone.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, well, sir. And then Wexler gets all up in Johnny Depp's business, and then they start.
Yeah, they start doing a fight. Wexler pulls out a knife.
And Wexler pulls out a knife because
the principal shows up.
The principal shows up. And the principal's like, oh, he's like, what are you guys doing here? And you shouldn't be fighting. And he's like, and then Wexler just goes to Johnny and says, oh, me and my buddy here, we're just hanging out. There's nothing to worry about.
Right. And then the principal lets them off.
He lets them off the hook. And then,
so then I think it cuts to they start following
Waxer around, and Waxer heads to, like down an alley, I think.
He goes to they follow him to this real fancy restaurant.
Real fancy restaurant. That's right. So they go to this fancy restaurant, and he basically Waxler meets up with
sort of like this. He looks like sort of like maybe he's some sort of like mafia
boss.
He's like wearing his jacket, not through his arms, but has like a cape.
Yes, and he's like, "Hello, Waxler. What are you? Thank you for meeting me." And I guess the guy was his drug dealer.
We don't know. Well, just
yeah. And so anyway, he basically talks to Waxler about.
They sort of swap cars, and Waxer says the good stuff's in the trunk.
Yeah.
Which I guess we don't think we learned exactly what it is, but
and
assume it's drugs or something.
And it's drugs, and then Waxler heads to the shop, right?
Well, he sort of drives off another way, and so Loki follows the original car, sort of the mafia
guy's car, right.
And Johnny Depp commandeers a cab.
Yes, and he follows, and the cab driver is like, what, where are you guys? He's like, you need to follow that cab. And he's like, I speak my language of the dollar bill. And he's like, come on, this is a chase scene. You need to go. And then he basically pulls out a wad of money and says, here, does that do something for you?
I thought he grabs his parking ticket and rips it up. He's not going to make him pay his parking ticket.
Oh, okay. I think it was something like that. And then, so Johnny Depp or Henson drives down. He follows the guy down the street or through the traffic.
Yeah, and the cab is drives really recklessly and sort of slams into Waxler.
And Waxler's like, "What the hell, man?" And Waxler gets out of the car, and Johnny's like, or Tom is like, what do I do? Or he's not like, what do I do? It's like, oh no, he's going to spot me. And he's like, what'd you do with my car, man? And then Waxler basically gets out and starts, he
recognizes Johnny and is like, are you following me? And then tries to shoot him.
Yeah. And then he shoots the cab and then runs off, and then Johnny Depp follows him chases him.
He gets on the phone and calls
backup.
Well, yeah, because the cab can't drive anymore.
Right.
So then he calls
Jinko. Right.
And they sort of set up a plan where they're going to try to, make some arrests now.
Yeah, and so they go to So they make a plan to get Hobbs, or not Hobbs, Hoff, the female cop.
Right. Well, because they want to get because they're worried Waxman's going to kill Kenny.
Kill Kenny. Right. And then Hoff, they kind of say get Hoff to be like a decoy and send her into.
Right. Yeah. I think
is
there's
that
one
where
more because so then we have a scene where Waxer comes up and gives Kennedy like a car.
Right.
It says there's like some good stuff in the trunk.
Right.
Some drugs. And so then the next day at school, Johnny Depp's like, where's Kenny?
And we find out that Kenny is playing hooky.
Well, no, he's overdosed.
In the bathroom. Overdosed in the bathroom. That's right. And he's over, and then Johnny Depp shows up and says, Kenny, he tries to revive him.
Yeah, then he calls for the
paramedics.
Right.
And then, but he doesn't, I like the fact that he kind of calls him, he still plays it like a high school kid, he doesn't blow his cover. And then he basically...
Then I think is now the final. So they do they have a cutscene real quick where they arrest the mob boss guy.
Right.
And then that cuts to sort of our final showdown with Hobbs.
And stuff. So Hobbs shows up and she's undercover and wearing a wire and goes to see Waxer.
Yeah,
and Waxer starts to I think Waxer kind of hits on her a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
And starts kind of she... But I like the fact that she plays it cool and she doesn't really blow her cover.
No. It's not until, so they have her, come in without her, because she had her partner with her, and they say, only you can come in to buy.
Right. And the partner is...
I can't remember his name.
It's I think the partner's name... It's just Truman. Harry.
No, Harry Truman's Loki. This is the other one. He's sort of more like the... I don't know.
Anyway, he basically... So they come in and sort of does Tyrell...
Yeah, they sort of spot the wire.
And Tyrell sort of gets aggressive
and then
with Holly.
So they sort of call off and they start shooting at each other.
And there's a big shootout and then...
Jinko sort of smashes his van through the wall or the door.
Yeah. And then, and
Johnny Depp sort of chases Tyrell on foot.
And it's a pretty good chase. What do you think of the chase, Jay? I mean, I liked it. I thought that the chase was really sort of gripping. I mean, it wasn't gripping, but it was gripping for at least this type of show.
Yeah.
So they chase him off. He climbs a fence.
Right.
And Johnny Depp, or...
it was Johnny Depp.
Yeah, Tom.
Yeah.
Tom chases him, and as they're chasing them, Tommy he ends up catching.
Yeah, Tyrell. They have they sort of
fight, and then after the fight, they arrest Tom. Or finally arrests Tyrell.
And then he says, "Make sure to read him his Miranda
rights." Making sure, right? Meet him his Miranda rights, and he says yes, and he says you have a right to remain silent. Anything he reads them the Miranda rights, and then let's see.
And then I think so they've sort of caught all the bad guys, and now it sort of cuts to the hospital where Kenny's
recovering, and he kind of Tom reveals to Kenny that he's a cop, and that's kind of the.
So Kenny originally is like, I hate you.
I hate you.
And then sort of the next day, Kenny's like,
you're cool.
Thank you. And then somehow Kenny is like they sort of tell it as a happy story where Kenny sort of gets off scot free. Right. While he's robbed, I think they said 15 stores.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, you robbed 15 stores. I kind of liked the I like the fact that and I don't know, I haven't watched enough 21 Jump Street to kind of know if it's going to be if it's one of those shows where it's just a case of the week kind of thing.
I would think so.
I would probably think so, something like that. So anyway, so he's like, and then then Kenny and his dad and his parents kind of reconnect a little bit.
Right.
And then that's pretty much the end of the episode.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like this episode or these episodes together. I think they're still trying to find their feet in this pilot episode, and I think a lot of people.
Ooh, actually, we forgot the very ending is where there's like, it's Friday night, you got to relax, and so then I guess the saxophone thing's gonna have a return where Johnny Depp goes and plays saxophone with Jinko and his jam band,
and that kind of ends the episode. I mean, so I kind of like this episode. I thought it was sort of okay. Kind of it's kind of the training wheels. It's kind of like exposition. Here's who he is, and I kind of like the fact that it's at least 2 parts, but it doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, I sat through two and a half hours of this show. It broke it up,
right?
Which made it which made it good. I think Johnny Depp's character is kind of suave. I mean, he's kind of charming. Didn't you kind of think? Or
I thought so. I guess what do you think are your favorite parts of this?
I kind of thought the opening was really interesting, like just how fast it went from action. I liked. I was kind of surprised that they didn't spend that it wasn't like, oh, you guys are going straight to high school. It kind of built up for them to go to high school. I think I like this. I think if I watched maybe 5 or 6 more episodes, I would probably. For a pilot, it wasn't bad. I feel like it was a pretty strong pilot, but I am wanting more, but I think I want more depth. I'm hoping that I'll get more depth in later seasons. I didn't know how dark it was going to be.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a little bit more fun.
More of a comedy.
Comedy and.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot more sort of dramatic.
Well, I think we're also coming from it from watching the movie and then watching the show, and kind of our version of comparing them are sort of going to be like the movie might be a little bit better than the show from our perspective, just because this was more of a comedy and this was more of a drama. But I liked it for real. I'll watch till probably. I could probably watch 7 more episodes. Maybe the next 7, just to get into it.
Right.
But that was the pilot for 21 Jump Street. I'm Steve, and of course I'm with
Jay.
And next is we're gonna finally get through John Wick chapter 4.
Eventually, we're gonna have to find the time.
I think we'll probably do some mini episodes. We'll probably do a mini episode before then.
Probably, yeah.
But you guys enjoy. Tell me what your thoughts were with the television series. Did you like it? Was it better than the movie? Does the show get better once we get through the pilot first season? If anything, let me know. And as always, like and subscribe. And thank you. And see you at the movies. Bye.